All right, well, welcome to the next installment in my series on quilt block tutorials. Today we're going to be talking about four patches. Now, four patches are really easy. You take four squares and you sew them together. But if you need a whole lot of identical four patches, cutting a whole lot of squares and then sewing them all together, it's not efficient. It's tedious. Let's talk about efficiency and assembly line kind of style sort of way of making these. So we're going to make a whole lot of four patches from two strips of fabric. And I'll tell you how to figure out what size strips you need in a minute. First, let's go over all my standard things, just in case this is the first video you're watching. Remember, as a general rule, my measurements are exact. I don't normally have you make things oversized and trimmed down later. Some pattern makers do, but that is not the way I do things. There is like a couple of exceptions, and I will tell you when those exceptions are. Remember, I also have a distinct dislike for sewing unsupported bias seams. Therefore, I will almost never, I can't think of any at the moment, but let's just say almost never, in case there is a time I have you cut triangles and sew on the bias, but that's an almost never. I will have you instead, I will have you cut squares and rectangles and make two of something. That doesn't apply here because this is just squares and rectangles. Everything's on the grain. There is no bias to worry about. Remember that standard practice of all quilt writers, not just me, is to give you the dimensions in the finished sizes. So this is a 6-inch finished size, 6-inch four patch. Now, if you went and measured it, it would be 6.5 inches. That is because there is a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. The finished size is the measurement we use. That is the size you see after it's completely sewn into your project. All right, so now let's talk the math. And yes, I know math is hard because I got it wrong this time, the first time I figured it out. So let's talk the math. It's actually not that hard, but confusing sometimes. So in this instance, I am going to be making 6 identical 6-inch finished four patch units. So those are the numbers we need, 6 of them, and they are 6 inches square, finished. So first thing you need to do, the first measurement you need to know is divide the finished size by 2 and then add 1/2 inch. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, add 1/2 inch, that's 3.5. That's a very, very important measurement. You're going to use this actually throughout the whole process. Remember that measurement. It's for a 6-inch one, that measurement you need to remember is 3.5. 6 divided by 2 plus 1/2 inch. That measurement is going to be the width of your strips, okay? Now, how long do you make your strips? That depends on how many four patch units you're needing to make. So, take how many you need to make. You need to make 6 of these. So multiply the number that you need to make by 2. So 6 times 2 is 12. All right, now, what was that first measurement we did? That first measurement was 3.5 to make a 6-inch one. So take that 12 and multiply it by that first measurement. So 12 times 3.5 is 42. 42 also is a number you need to remember because standard quilting cottons, their width is normally in the range of 42 to 44. I always err on the side of caution and assume it's 42. I actually have found a few that are a tiny bit smaller, but that's a whole other story. So if that number that you've come up with, if say I needed to make 7 of these, I would need 2 strips because you can't get 7. It's bigger than that. So if their number is bigger than 42, you're going to need more than 1 strip of each color. Anyway, well, we're just going to use 1 strip of each color. This measurement is the length. So in this case, I am cutting a strip each of the blue and the tan that is 3.5 inches wide. And since my number was 42, I'm just going to go the whole width of the fabric. So I will see you at the cutting mat. So here are my 2 strips. Again, I'm making 6 identical 6-inch 4-patch units. So I have 2 strips that are 3.5 inches wide just by the width of fabric, because fabric's 42 inches. The math for me would have been 3.5 by 42. Stack your fabric strips one on top of the other, right sides together. Sew these strips together along one long edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Open this new strip set and press the seam allowance to one side. Cut the strip set in half. On the back of one of these half strip sets, draw a set of lines which are spaced apart based on the first measurement you calculated. For example, I'm making 6-inch finished 4 patches. That first measurement I calculated way back there when I did my math was 3.5 inches. I'm going to draw a line every 3.5 inches. I do recommend that you draw your lines in alternating colors, and you'll see why as we sew. So the first line I am drawing in green. I'm having to use yellow on the dark blue section because the green doesn't show. And then the next line I'm drawing in red. The line after that is the green and yellow. And the line after that is red. You'll see as we sew why I'm doing that. Stack these 2 half strip sets on top of each other, right sides together, with the seams nesting and the colors opposite each other. You'll see I stack the tan on the blue and the blue on the tan. Do make a note that if your strips are quite long, you will probably want to pin them periodically to keep those seams nesting. If they're long, they could slide on you. Okay, so starting at one end of this strip set, preferably the end that are evened up together, sew a seam across the short ends of the strip set using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then sew 1/4 inch on either side of every second drawn lines. That's why you'll see why I had you draw the lines in alternating colors. You see I'm skipping the green-yellow line, and then I'm sewing a 1/4 inch either side of the red line. And then I'm skipping the next green line, and I'm sewing at the red line. And so until I get down to the end. You see when I get to the end, I know that the side on the other side of the red line is not enough, so I'm only sewing a 1/4 inch on the close side of that last red line. Cut the 4 patches apart on every drawn line. Don't worry if the thread is kind of pulling things in a corner. When you cut that thread, it'll lay flat. We'll be fine. Open the 4 patches and press the seam allowances. Make sure you twist the seam allowances where the 4 seams cross, the way I showed you in the quilting tips and tricks tutorial. There will be a link down below in case you need a refresher on that. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed learning how to make a whole lot of 4-patch units all at once. Remember, the smaller your finished 4-patch, the more you can get out of one strip of fabric. So that's a thing. I only got 6 out of a width of fabric because I was making 6 inches. If I was making 4 inches or whatever, I could get more out of it. That's a thing to keep in mind. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed making this. If you did, please go over to YouTube and give me a big thumbs up so the algorithm there knows that you liked it and will suggest it to more people. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.